This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this conversation featuring Ben Ryan, who was in Cradle of Filth in the early 90s. Now, as many of you watching and listening will know, I am collecting interviews with as many of the ex-members of 90s era Cradle of Filth as I can. Now on socials, and in some of the videos that I've already posted, I issued the call, and listener Thomas Moore was tuned in, and he sent me a link to Ben Ryan's LinkedIn account. One thing led to another, and Ben graciously agreed to appear on the show. Now, Ben is the very first keyboard player in the group. There was nobody before him. He appeared on all 3 demos and the album that kicked it all off, the 1994 release, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh. Now, there's not much that I want to share in the introduction because Ben and I cover a bunch of topics from his time in the group, so you'll just have to stick around and listen to what he has to say. I will say this though, Ben is a good bloke and I truly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. So here he is, Ben Ryan from Cradle of Filth. Thanks a lot for doing this, by the way. There's going to be...
No worries, man.
There's... Just so as you know, mate, there's a ton of interest in 90s era Cradle of Filth.
Oh, is there?
Look, I'm not saying I'm a subject matter expert, but I've kind of fallen into this role just because of my interest in the band's music.
Right.
From my teenage years, and I'm now in my mid-40s, but there's a ton of people out there that are like me, you know, with mortgages, kids, all of the usual pressures and stresses that those of us that did launch, we're not failure to launch, we did launch, you know, we're regular and participative members of society. But we have these very strong memories and feelings toward the era of the band that you were a big part of.
Oh, cool. Well, that's good to hear, man. I mean, you know, it's a long time ago for me. I've gone in all sorts of different directions since then, you know. So it's, you know, for me, it's one of them things. It's always been there. Occasionally I run into someone who's interested and says nice things, or someone sends me a link of something interesting. But in terms of actually doing anything with Cradle, it's like 25 plus years, you know. So, you know, but it's nice. I'm pleased people are still interested, you know, it's cool.
Yeah, so do you get many people like me, podcasters, videocasters, that sort of thing, reaching out to you wanting to have conversations?
Not really, no. I mean, I avoided it for a long time, to be fair. I avoided it. I just couldn't be doing with it. When I got out of the music industry, I was just like, I just wanted to do anything else. You know, I started, as we all do, getting involved in bands and stuff because I loved it. And I ended up not really enjoying it, and it was a paycheck, you know, and not a very good one. So it was like I just sort of left it behind and couldn't be doing with it, you know. So I kind of ignored it for a long time, and I don't think I ever ignored anyone. If anyone reached out to me, I sort of said hello, no thanks, but no thanks, you know. But I don't know. So I did see one thing written online saying I don't get involved with Cradle fans and stuff like that. So, which I don't think I've ever sort of consciously done, but I haven't also gone out of my way to do anything about it, you know. So
it's a very weird band. It's got to be said at this point in time. More members have come and gone from that band. More tenured members, I might add, not just session members, because plenty of bands have one person and other people coming in. The background and even in the foreground, but with Cradle, I think let me go to my notes. I did a recent count, 41 current and former members.
Really? Right.
It's amazing from the perspective that the band has been able to keep going, but there are reasons behind that because I've got some insight. You know, I've spoken to Paul, your former bandmate, Nick.
Paul Allender.
Bandmate. Yeah, Paul Allender. Yeah. He shared a lot with me. A lot that he asked me a lot that he asked me not to broadcast, actually. So when I had a chat to him, it was all about his new outfit because he's living in the States now. Yeah,
so I heard. Yeah, I ran into Paul about, like 10 years ago or something. And it was right near the airport, near Stansted Airport. And it was just in the garage. Like I was just going and getting some fuel. And he was on a motorbike and he was just getting fuel. Had a quick chat, but he was in a hurry. I was in a hurry. So I think that's the last time I actually spoke to him. I think he said then that he was either going out to the States a lot or he was living there or something.
He's over there now. He's basically got a new life as far as I can see. I mean, I didn't know him really in the Cradle days. I don't know him now, but I know what he's told me about what's going on in his life. And he's reforged himself over there and got a new band called the Unnamed
That's
Horrors,
good.
and
Yeah.
Nick is still banging around, literally, in different bands.
And Nick Barker.
Yeah.
Right. No, I literally haven't seen Nick since probably about 3 or 4 years after leaving Cradle. I ran into him at Download, but he said hello and stuff. But that was it. That's like, I haven't seen Nick since then, really. So,
look, it brings me to the reason that I wanted to have a chat, because I've never spoken to a foundation member of I spoke to Danny, but that's a bit of a different story.
Right.
Meaning that it was for a presser. Well, it was for a presser, and actually, so strange. Tonight, I've got a chat with him.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's got a new album out. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head at the moment, but it's very.
Is that with Cradle? Because he's got a hang on, Google broadcast going on. Hang on. Is that a new Cradle album? Because he had another project at one point.
No,
didn't he?
Devilment, I think, is his name of his.
That's it. Project. Yeah.
This is definitely with Cradle though, and he's your successor about 15, I think 9 or 10 times removed.
Right.
Annabelle Aratni, I think, or Ertani, I think her name is. We had 3 conversations lined up through Nuclear Blast, the agent in Australia, and she didn't make any of them. So, there was also they were cancelled in advance, sort of thing. So I wanted to have a chat to her, and I wasn't going to grill her, but I mean, she's joined a band where it's synonymous for having plenty of ex-members. So I wanted to get her take on what she thought her role would be moving forward, But sorry, I'll digress and I'll get back to you. But
no worries, man.
Outside of Danny, this is the first time I've had a conversation with a foundation member, which you are.
Right, yeah.
You were there at the very, very beginning. Nobody in the band had played keyboards before you.
No.
You're it. You're the alpha and the omega as far as that's concerned. And I've already mentioned, look, I'm more or less collecting conversations with the group's 90s members. And the view ultimately is to potentially write a book, because there's a massive interest in doing that out there. Big appetite amongst, as I say, the fans.
Cool.
And I want to just set the scene for people that might be watching and listening here, that you wrote and performed on the studio debut, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh.
No, I mean, and the demos, Dan and my brother went to school together, and they were in a band. They were in a few different projects and things like that, and they were going out under the name Burial, and they were doing this demo under the name Burial, and they said I think it was Paradise Lost Gothic. And they played it to me, and they were like, "Can you do something like this? We like the contrast between the orchestral stuff and the metal stuff." So they were recording on a 4-track in my brother's room. So I went up and just sort of played some stuff and jammed some stuff and whatever. And that was what became the first demo, which I think was Orgiastic Pleasures Foul. I think was the first one.
I think the first one was Invoking
the Unclean. Yeah. So that was that, and that was done in my brother's room. And before it came out, we found out a band in Bolton called Burial, who they were going out, they were gigging and stuff. So they decided to change the name. So that was my first sort of involvement with it. And I was kind of like part-time member / roadie / hanger on, whatever, just went to the gigs and was involved in the band sort of, in that sort of capacity. Then they did another demo and said, well, let's, write some songs with us, or get more involved before we've written the song, sort of thing. And then after that, I started playing live with them and doing stuff with them live and writing and rehearsing and stuff with them. And that led to Total Fucking Darkness, which was the first sort of, I suppose that sort of showcased where it was going from there. Up until that, it was, a bit sort of just messing around, Paul and Dan's project. They were just having a bit of a laugh and getting me to play some keyboards on it,
Mm-hmm.
So...
And when you say Paul...
Sorry, hang on a second, Andrew. Sure. Yeah, of course you can, yeah.
When you say Paul, you're talking about your brother, not Paul Allender.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think people need to understand that it was actually Paul Ryan, your brother, and Danny who started the band. And between the two of them, if you were asked to pick a member who actually was the motivation behind even starting a band, would it be your brother or would it be Danny?
It'd be hard to say, really. They were both active in lots of different bands and projects and jamming with people. And, they were, both had very strong ideas of stuff they wanted to do. Yeah, no, I mean, they were both, involved in all sorts of bands and projects and sort of, like school bands, really, like we were all just mates at school and we all just sort of jammed with each other and went and saw each other's bands. And he was sort of into sort of underground bands and stuff as well, but mainly he was sort of, loved Slayer and like, guitar bands, like with good extreme guitar players, Napalm Death and Death and, just cool stuff like that. Dan was always into sort of a lot more sort of not diverse, because Paul's also got really diverse tastes. He's into all sorts of things, but Dan was into more sort of horror-y stuff. I suppose the stuff that you would associate with Cradle as an image is more aligned to the stuff that Dan was already into. So that was already sort of a partnership between them at the time. When I first started playing on the things, they knew that that's kind of the two main elements of where they were going with it was extreme metal, but something a bit dark about it as well.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah. So did Paul write most of that music back then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, at that point, Paul wrote all the music and Dan wrote all the lyrics. And then, on that first demo, they just called me in with completed songs and showed me the chords. And I just, sort of played some bits over what they had written, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I believe, I'm just trying to think back to what order it happened in. Around that period, John Pritchard joined the band, who lived in the same town as Dan. Was a friend of Dan's. I don't know how much he was involved in the writing of it specifically. I think, it was always a democracy in terms of everyone was welcome to bring ideas to the table, and it was never like, oh, this is my band, you can't write for it, or any nonsense like that. It was like, if you had an idea, if you had a riff, if you had anything really, you could bring it to the table, and everyone would sort of look at it with an open mind. And and I think, I don't know if John or Darren joined first, but Darren Garden, the first drummer, they sort of joined at around the same sort of time. That's when it sort of became a proper band and they started doing gigs, and I'd sort of go along and see the gigs and stuff. So. Okay,
rightio. So they were playing, they needed a keyboard player because they wanted a point of difference in and amongst all of the other bands that were happening in extreme and black metal at the time. Yeah, because your keys are a significant aspect of what made the Principle of Evil Made Flesh stand out against a lot of the Scandinavian stuff. So were you given complete artistic license to write? Say, I can't remember the name of the introductory tune on the album, but that lovely. I mean,
within reason, yeah. I mean, it was the same vibe as I could bring anything to the table, but so could they. So Paul might say, "Oh, I heard this movie soundtrack. Listen to this. That's kind of got a cool sound to it," and I'd take that on board and try and incorporate that in something, or Dan could. And when I was writing the stuff, other people would come and listen to what I was doing and say, "Oh, I like how this bit goes, but how about if it went in this direction, or how about if it went down there instead of up?" Or so it was kind of collaborative, but at the same time, no one ever told me you must do this or you can't do that. It was I was basically allowed to do whatever I wanted, and everyone else was allowed to sort of have input into it.
So what were the circumstances around yourself and your brother's departure? Because if I'm not mistaken, you left at the same time.
Yeah, me and Paul Allender all left at the same time. It's a long time ago, and I don't really want to rake over old coals and drag up, specifics and old crap, but it turned from what I was just describing to you was a load of mates making some cool music and doing some cool stuff, you know, and people liked what we were doing. And, you know, we got the T-shirts, we came up with the first Fuck Your God T-shirts, and then the Jesus is a Cunt T-shirts. And it sort of, you know, it all took off, and we were still all just mates having a laugh and, you know, writing some cool music and going and doing gigs and, you know, blagging away onto tours and stuff like that, you know. And at a certain point, it tipped into being, there was people around us who, they weren't there in the beginning and they didn't have the same ethos as us. And it was, it became very businesslike, and we didn't notice at the time, or at least not all of us noticed. Some of us might have noticed. I didn't notice. And it was just all of a sudden there was this machine around us, and we were like, okay, this is not quite what we signed up for. And, you know, there was factions and, you know, people, instead of it, as we were all on one side up until, certainly until around the principal recording period, we were all on the same side. And around that period, it started to become that we weren't all on the same side. People had, not just within the band, but people surrounding the band, you know, people within the business side of things had their own agendas, and it wasn't really a nice environment to be in. And that was it, really. It just wasn't a nice environment to be in anymore. And bit by bit, it became toxic, you know, and it got to a point where there was clearly some shit wrong. You know, there was some stuff happening that we had no idea about and we had no say in. This was me, Paul and Paul. We had a conversation at a rehearsal. Everyone left the rehearsal room to, I don't know, go and do whatever. And the three of us sat down and were like, have you noticed this? And we sort of had this conversation, and it was like, yeah, this is not fucking cool. Paul and Paul had said that they'd already had a conversation and they'd decided they were going to leave. And I said, well, I'm not staying in the band if you guys are leaving. So we left and started a new band.
What was the name of the band?
The Blood Divine.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And that's more of an extreme metal project, isn't it? In the true sense of the word.
I guess so. It was kind of, it was more bluesy and stonery influenced.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. So, I mean, you know, we sort of had, I played, you know, like there's a Hammond, we hired for the second album for the Blood Divine, hired a Hammond organ. You know, we're using all sorts of sounds like that, you know. So it was very different from Cradle. But at the same time, it was still, you know, still a heavy band.
Yeah, it just sounds like this theme has come up constantly with ex-members. It just sounds like, and you haven't said this, so I'm reading into it, as though decisions were made to place Danny at the center of the band, both from as the focal point, as the band's spokesperson, and from a business perspective as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that.
So was Faye Walden involved in the group toward the end of your tenure?
I've never met Faye. As far as I'm aware, I've never met her. I might have said hello to her at a party or something at some point, but as far as I'm aware, I've never met Faye, no.
It sounds as though, and again, we're just talking here. I'm not making, there's certain accusations or assumptions here. We're just talking. Okay. It sounds as though when Faye got involved, she had some ambitions for the group. And that's when the band started to becoming more like Danny and the Filth with Les, you know, your successor twice removed. Yeah. Famously quipped back in the day. Yeah. Because that's when you started to see the T-shirts with him as a focal point, as the singular, as opposed to the band.
Yeah, I stopped paying attention, to be honest. So I don't know. I mean, I saw some of what happened after we left because we were still in the magazines, and we'd do an interview and get the copy of the magazine with our interview and see there'd be a Cradle interview in there as well. So it's not like I was completely oblivious to that they were still about and still doing stuff, but I just moved on. It wasn't really that interesting to me. And, you know, as far as I could see, you know, me, Paul and Paul had written the majority of the music. I mean, entirely, really, like up until Dusk and Her Embrace, and including Dusk and Her Embrace. Yeah, we'd written everything. bar a few little bits and pieces here and there where, John Kennedy, bass player, he was massively involved in the Dusk pre-production and stuff like that. So he contributed. He was no small part of that era. But a lot of the music was already written when John got on board. So essentially, up until that point, between me, Paul, and Paul, we'd written all the music, and so it kind of seems right to me that in some respects, the three remaining people would be more of a focus than any new people joining. I mean, I've not really thought about it, but it didn't strike me as odd at the time that Dan was at the front in this line. He's the front man, isn't he? He's the singer, so that's kind of how it often goes anyway. So,
yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's not unusual that it goes like that. It's with the amount of the lend. Usually, bands that have the turnover that Cradle of Filth have, they don't last that long.
Yeah,
but Cradle has. I mean, I'll give Dan massive credit for that. I mean, it's 30 years or something.
Hats off to him, man. I mean, he's relentless. He's absolutely kept it going, and he's not thrown the towel in. And I'm sure it's been straight with that much turnover. I'm sure that's been a stressful thing because it takes time and effort and energy to train people up and get them to learn material, and it changes the dynamic of the band. And so yeah, fair play to him. He's kept going, and they're still doing stuff. So, but yeah, and but Dan's always been a hard worker. Even back in the day when it was all just fun. Dan did loads of letter writing to people. It was back in tape trading. We were sort of sending tape lists and exchanging tapes with people. And Dan was always the most prolific amongst us in terms of writing letters and being in contact with people because he works hard. So fair play.
Yeah, he's a natural marketer and communicator, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Yeah, he is, and he's a likable guy as well. He's charismatic. I always got on great with Dan. Politics aside, and all the falling out and leaving the band and all that business aside, me and Dan always got on great. So I don't. Had you asked me 20 years ago, there was probably axes to grind and things I would have said that would have been less complimentary, but these days I'm like, it's so long ago, I don't, it's history. We had very similar tastes in a lot of music. We both recording Dusk and Her Embrace, we listened endlessly to loads of the same albums like War of the Worlds. Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds?
Of course, loved it, yeah.
So that was on constant rotation, and the Edward Scissorhands soundtrack, Danny Elfman, and the Dracula soundtrack, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, and I can never pronounce the composer's name, so I'm not even going to try and attempt it. But there was a load of music that we just had on constant rotation, and we were both sort of listening to all those things. Other music was going on as well, but if me or Dan were putting something on it, it'd be like one of those albums. A Typo Negative, Bloody Kisses as well was sort of on constant rotation as well.
I'd read that. Yeah.
So it was all cool. It was all cool until it wasn't, and we were all mates until we weren't, So.
It's interesting hearing your perspective on Danny. I know it's been 25 years or longer since you've been. Yeah,
I mean, literally haven't spoken to Dan in 25 years, so
But look, since I've been doing these conversations, I've had people reach out to me that say, I've got no reason to not believe them simply because of the insight that they've given to me based on they've seen my interviews and said, hey, look, I was in a band that toured with Cradle back in the day, or I was mates with whichever band member it might have been. Yeah. And I've got to be frank, most describe Danny as a deeply unpleasant individual. Saying that if you weren't, their observations were if you weren't useful to him, he ignored you. But your assessment is that it wasn't like that for you.
Not on the inside. I mean, maybe on the outside it was. I don't know. Absolutely. Like Dan is very pragmatic, and he doesn't suffer fools, and. He certainly can be someone who would be aware of opportunities around him and who to be friends with, and stuff like that. But to an extent, don't we all? We're all friendly to people that are potentially useful to us, or can do some nice things for us. Do you know what I mean? It's but I never found Dan to be exclusively like that any more than anyone else. Certainly less than a lot of people in the music industry. And he was always cool with me. So I can't, I can't say more than that about it, really. I know there's a lot of people that have axes to grind and things to say. I can't comment on it. It's I can only really say what my experience was. Falling out with people is shit. Falling out with people you've been friends with for a long time is going to get emotional. It's going to get personal. But 25 years ago, so what, up until...
you've gone on to lead a successful life. It's one of those things where it's probably just so far in the rearview mirror at this point, there's no point in having any access.
Totally. It's a cool thing, it's once in a while I'll meet someone and it's interesting, I'm like, how cool is it that something I haven't even touched for 25 years, like occasionally I meet someone and they're interested in it, and they want to talk about it, and that's pretty cool, So
from that perspective, indeed.
Yeah. And I learned a lot, and I had a fucking brilliant time. We went on tour all over the place, and we met all sorts of interesting people, famous and not famous. We met all sorts of interesting people, saw all sorts of interesting places, and at an interesting time as well. We went to East Germany, and when the wall had not long been down, it was still East Germany, although politically it was united. You could tell it was East Germany, versus what you got in West Germany, and we went to Poland when it was not much different, and so there's we had a cool time. We did some cool things, partied a lot, played some cool gigs, and I look back on that time broadly fondly. Mistakes were made, both on a business front and a friendship front. Everyone fucked up on some level or another about how things were managed, but it was a difficult situation. We were a bunch of kids in a difficult situation, so what,
Mm-hmm. Hey, what are your recollections of the contract that was signed with Cacophonous Records? Because that seemed to be,
man.
Yeah, a big issue back then.
I try not to hold on to shit, Is that a polite way of putting it? I've never been paid a single fucking penny for Principle of Evil Made Flesh. So, make of that what you will.
Can you offer any deep insight into the contract itself, though? Because it caused the re-recording of Dusk and Her Embrace, which effectively broke the band worldwide. Yeah.
It's difficult to remember. It was complicated, As I understand it, we went in and recorded Dusk, and it was between recording it and it getting released that me, Paul, and Paul left the band. And it was still tied to Cacophonous, and the band didn't want to be with, we didn't want to be with Cacophonous Records at that point. We had this, what we thought was a fucking great album, and we didn't want to be tied to this record company who we felt weren't, to put it politely, weren't the best place for us to be, so there was talk even at that point of, can we get out of this contract? Can we sell the album to someone else? What do we need to do to move on to a different company? I don't know. We left the band, and then it wasn't our problem anymore, So,
what was, when you say Cacophonous wasn't the best place for Cradle? What were the key issues as you saw them?
I think they didn't really certain aspects of it. Neil, the Nihil, I think most people call him. He was all right, He was an all right guy, and he knew that we had potential and that stuff could be done. But I don't think everyone at the company realised that they were I'm just trying to think how to put it. There was a lot of potential there, and not everyone at the company realised it. And with all the internal conflicts in the band, it was very difficult to manage that on top of everything else, So, but I mean, broadly speaking, we were a bunch of kids who signed a record contract because someone came along and said, I really like what you're doing. Can you sign this? And we'll put a record out. And we went, oh, fucking yeah, I'll put a record out. And then, surprise, surprise, 2 years later, 3 years later, we weren't very happy with that contract that we signed, So that's it, really, It was not a great contract, and I've never been paid. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that. What about the merchandise side of things? Did you have much of a say? Because I mean, the music's one thing, but I mean, you couldn't go to an extreme metal gig back in the 90s as I used to without seeing another Cradle of Filth t-shirt. They're almost anywhere in the world. I've seen the videos online. You've seen them. You go to a Marduk show or whatever other extreme metal band, there's people there with Cradle of Filth t-shirts. So the marketing side of things with the merch was extremely important. And did you have a lot of say in that?
In the early days. I mean, again, it's one of those things, when it was good, and when it turned shit, it wasn't, but yeah, we, the Fuck Your God t-shirts, we were I think we were still unsigned at that point. I think we were talking to a couple of different companies. We did a thing for a company called Tombstone Records. I don't know how much you know about the Goetia, I think it was the name of it, but we recorded an album. We recorded an album called the Goetia, or the Goetia, I think some people call it. I recorded it in a studio in Ipswich. And I think it was around that period that we first came up with the Fuck Your God t-shirts. But yeah, so this company, Tombstone Records in Newcastle, I think they were, they booked the studio 10 days in Springvale Studios in Ipswich. And we went in and we did the 10 days. And the guy from the company was supposed to come down and pay for it on the last day of the recording. And he phoned up the recording studio like a day before or something and said, sorry, I can't make it down now. Can you just send the tapes up to me and I'll send a check to you? And the guy at the studio quite reasonably said, no, I fucking can't. Come down and pay for your recording session, Yeah. So he kept hold of the tapes, and then there was this bit of a standoff. No contract ever appeared with Tombstone Records. Nobody from Tombstone Records ever appeared. I don't even know if they were a real company. I don't know what the fuck was going on. That album sat there. That was obviously like between Total Fucking Darkness and Principle of Evil Made Flesh. And it sat in Mark's studio for months and months and months. And then Mark needed to record a band and ran out of tape and recorded over it because he needed the tape. So there's like 2 songs floating about, 3 sort of like pre-mix, rough mixes that came out of that are floating about. I think there was a Dusk, the reissue of Dusk, I think might have had a couple of those songs on it. So it was about that time. That we were all we had a t-shirt out with the old logo, which I don't know if you've seen the old logo. It's kind of all splatter, kind of gore, kind of. Yeah. So it was like I had a t-shirt out with that on it, and we were just having a conversation. We were getting drunk in Christchurch Park in Ipswich, and we were having a conversation about like offensive t-shirts, and like punks, how the punks were offensive for the sake of being offensive, and it sold a lot of records. The fact that the Sex Pistols and other bands of their era and ilk were just offensive for the sake of it, Mm-hmm. We were having a conversation. What could we print on a t-shirt that would just be offensive, just for the sake of it? And we just came up with all these different slogans, of which Fuck Your God became the one that went on a t-shirt. And we didn't think much of it. We just thought it was funny, And we had a gig, I think it was with Paradise Lost. Their name comes up again. I think it was with Paradise Lost in Liverpool. And we got 30 T-shirts made. And we were like, I can't remember how, like a few £100 or whatever it cost us to have these T-shirts made. And we borrowed it off one of our dads or so. Do you know what I mean? We'd someone else paid for our T-shirts, and we think we better fucking sell some of these T-shirts because otherwise we're going to, owe someone's dad some money, And went up there. And before we'd even gone on stage, we'd sold all 30 of them. No one had even heard us. Or maybe they had them. Maybe there's some people that had the demo or something, but we hadn't even gone on stage, and we sold all 30 T-shirts. So like the next gig, we got 60 printed, and we sold all them before we went on stage as well. Yes. And it was like, okay, we're kind of onto something now, you know? So we carried on selling them for a while, and then we were like, well, can we have another? What else can we say? What's more offensive than fuck your God? And I think it was my brother that came up with Jesus is a cunt. And it was like, yeah, like, fuck it. Yeah, you know, we'll have that on a T-shirt. So, and that was really like, that was what kicked it off, really. Like the ball really started rolling when those T-shirts came out. We were doing all right, you know, people liked what we were doing, and we were getting some interest, and we were talking to some record companies, and, you know, things were going okay. But us and dozens of other bands in the scene were also doing okay and doing gigs and whatever. But those T-shirts just really sort of kicked it off to another level, really. So.
And then the fella got arrested, and it made national news.
Yeah. It's what was it? Paul something, the guy's name. I met him at one of the gigs. He came along to one of the gigs and said who he was. But excuse me.
Yeah, he got arrested in the London version of, this is an absurd comparison, but I just can't remember the name of the place. But London's version of Fortitude Valley here in Brisbane, which is
right. I think was it Reigate Cemetery? I think he was. Was he in Reigate?
Oh, Cemetery, was it? Okay, I thought he was in a nightclub district.
Oh, was it? I don't know.
Danny said, I remember reading. Danny,
I could have entirely made that up. I don't know. I don't know. I thought it was a cemetery. Was there some vandalism? I might be confusing. There was some vandalism to a cemetery around the same time that we got blamed for. That might have been what I'm confusing it with.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be about right with the way the media spin things even back then. But I remember it was Danny was saying that he was in a red light district or in a nightclub precinct or something like that. And, you know, I mean, half of the people walking around you were on bloody tablets and God knows whatever else.
Yeah.
And yet the police decided to arrest a fella who didn't display no signs of public intoxication for wearing a T-shirt. But that's the moral police. And then there was the what was that group? Something or another for Jesus, you know, people for Jesus or what have you, you know, the evangelical people or something. And I think that spurred a lot of young fans to buy the T-shirt because they were just really fed up with a lot of this evangelism.
Totally, yeah. I mean,
evangelism that was going on. Sorry, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people bought the T-shirt not having a clue who we were. You know, they just thought it was a cool T-shirt, and it was. I agree. You know, it was a cool T-shirt, and it did what it was supposed to do, which was just to be offensive for the sake of it. And there was a deeper message behind it, although we didn't necessarily know it at the time. But just the idea of, you know, it wasn't fuck God, it was fuck your God. Whatever it is you're holding up, whatever it is that you're, you know, obviously it was aimed at, you know, Christianity, but whatever it is that you're idolizing and treating as, you know, your reason for being, fuck that too, you know. And I think people liked it, you know, people liked that sort of anarchic, you know, and it was big. We asked the printer, how big can you put it on the back of the T-shirt? It was literally to the millimeter as big as we could get it printed on the back of a T-shirt, you know.
I mean, that kicked it. I've seen, I mean, everybody's in the scene has seen the T-shirts that came after that, but that was probably the first to do that.
Yes, definitely to do it so blatantly. I mean, you know, people had offensive T-shirts, you know, metal bands had, you know, gore on their gore pictures and things on their T-shirts and offensive slogans down the sleeve or, you know, whatever. But I think we were the first to do, like, right, let's do this as big as we can possibly do it. Black T-shirt, white letters, big slogan on the back. You know, I think we were the first to do it so blatantly. People liked it, whatever way, you know, it certainly caused a stir, and you know, gave us a good launching platform, you know, and like I was always pleased that the feedback we got was that people saw the T-shirt and thought, fuck, I better check this band out, and came and weren't disappointed that we were just some shit band that had a good idea for a T-shirt, you know. Which always pleased me because I never thought we were a shit band. I always thought, you know, we always had good people in the band. You know, not everyone who's played in the band has been a world-class musician in terms of their technical ability, but in terms of their creativity and in terms of their commitment and dedication and understanding what metal's about and what rebellion is about, what, you know, rebellion of youth and all that stuff. Totally committed, and everyone was like bang up for it, you know. And so I always thought we were a good band, you know, for a lot of different reasons. And it was always good feedback to have someone who came along for the T-shirt and realised there was more to it than that, you know.
Yeah, and it's a good point that you raised there, because I certainly feel this way, and I know a lot of people feel this way, that you should have been honoured through the re-release of Dusk and Her Embrace, you know, the original Sin version that came out in 2016 or 17, one of those 2 years. I've only listened to it once, I've got to say.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons I haven't gone back and revisited it and attempted to really dive in and understand the difference between that version and the Music for Nations version is because you guys weren't honoured on it, and you should have been. Right. Do you have a view on that?
I have no axe to grind. Go and listen to it, man. You know, I'm proud of it. You know, it was a great record. You know, and for a long time, it was the best thing I'd done. You know, and I was really happy with it. And it was a real shame to me. I think it's a real shame the band broke up how it did, because we'd done the best record we'd ever done. You know, and I mean, equally, the one that came out. Totally biased, totally my opinion. I listened to it a couple of times and thought it's not as good as our version, but obviously I would think that, you know. But so yeah, go and have a listen to it, man. You know, I don't know if I receive. I do receive some royalties for that, so go and buy it by all means.
Oh, you do? Okay, well that's different.
Yeah, for that one I do. Yeah, but equally, you know, I don't make good money out of it, so you know, go and pirate it if you like. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not encouraging anyone to go and break the law, but I don't care. Everyone has my permission to go and, you know, record it and listen to it, and you know, it's all good by me, you know.
But I'm gonna raise this at Danny tonight, because both that re-release and the re-release remixing and remistressing, he called it, of Cruelty and the Beast were missed opportunities, because he's the only member still in the group from those two lineups. What would have been fantastic was to do some videos with yourself, your brother, Paul, Allender, just talking about the writing, the construction of the songs, because you guys wrote the songs.
Yeah, no one ever asked me. No one ever asked me about it. Like, that would have been, it could have been interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing for me to ask you the questions, but it's another thing for... I have a limited audience because I'm just me and I don't have a machine behind me. But when you start talking about Nuclear Blast, that's a completely different story. The biggest metal label at the moment. And I think, were they behind the original Sin re-release, or was that Cacophonous? I suppose Cacophonous.
Oh yeah, no, that was Cacophonous. Yeah.
Well, at least it got a broad release. You know, they must have licensed it to someone who knew what they were doing in terms of getting it out there.
I don't know. Someone said, "Is this all right with you?" And I said, "Well, give me some money, and I'll be all right about it." And they gave me some money, and that was it. You know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, to be honest, man. You know.
Yeah. No, all good. So, all good. But it sounds, this conversation's been interesting in that I know. You're the member that I've spoken to that's been out of the band now the longest, over 25 odd years or so.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm not getting any, and I've got to say, I didn't get an overwhelming sense of resentment. That's not quite the right word with the ex-members, but it's that sense that things could have been very different. And I am hearing that with you. But I'm also getting the impression that you're sort of looking back very fondly of a time in your life.
Oh, yeah.
As a time in your youth.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. It was like splitting up with a great girlfriend, you know. It's like, you know, when it was good, it was fucking brilliant, you know, and then it wasn't, and then it was over, and there was a load of shouting and arguing, and that was 25 years ago. But I still, you know, I look back on it and think, it was some really good times, you know, some good things. And I learned a lot, you know, and I learned as a musician, as an artist, as well as a person, you know, from those experiences, you know. And I'm getting back into music now. I don't know if I don't think I've said to you anything about it, but over lockdown, after Blood Divine, I played in a couple of other bands, and you know, nearly got things going with them, but for one reason or another, nothing ever really sort of got done, working with people that there's always one person in a band that stops it from getting done. And I just got fucked off with it. And I was like, bollocks to this. I'm not earning any money out of it. And there's a lot of hard work and I'm not enjoying it anymore. So I just downed tools and went in other directions. But over lockdown, I had nothing to do for an extended period of time. And so I sat down. I've always kept up like sound engineering and making noises just out of interest, just sort of playing with synthesizers and audio recording equipment and whatever, just for fun, just because I'm a geek and I just enjoy playing with stuff, So I've always sort of known how to do the stuff. And over lockdown, I thought I'm going to just write a tune, just see what happens. And I really enjoyed it. I felt it was like back in the day and I was really satisfied with it. And what came out was really cool and I was really happy with it. And I said to a friend of mine who our paths never crossed musically. We became friends after I'd stopped playing in bands. He'd already been, playing in metal bands. And he always said, I wish you were still playing because I'd love to play in a band with you. So I sent him this recording and said, well, like, do what you like with it. Like, I'm not going to give you any guidance whatsoever. It's an ambient thing, it's got rhythm and structure to it, but there's no drums on it. There's no guitars on it. It's all keyboards and ambient. And I was like, go for it, do what you like. And what he came back with was sort of 9 Inch Nails-y, industrially, a bit sort of drum and bassy. It was really interesting. And I was like, yeah, that's fucking really good, man. So I wrote some more tunes. I just carried on writing and kept sending them to my friend Simon, and he kept sending them back. And there's another guy I've started working with, Andrew, who I've done the same thing with. And there's like, of these songs, some of them, there's like 4 or 5 different versions with different people that have done different bits and, whatever. So I've ended up with now an album's worth of material. I'm just finishing off an album's worth of material. Which I'm hoping someone wants to put out. I haven't spoken to anyone about it at this point, but I'm just sort of doing the final mixes now of it's 11 tracks, but one of them is maybe not going to get released for other reasons. It might get kept back, but in total, there's like 25 different recordings, of which there's like 11 songs. Mm-hmm. So I'm just sort of adding the final things to it. And if no one wants to release it, like I'm going to approach them once I've got a finished mix or at least a sort of finished collection of these tracks. I'm going to approach some record companies and see if anyone wants to release it. And if they don't, I'll just put it out for free on Bandcamp or SoundCloud or whatever platform.
What's the name of the project?
It's Oblivion, but under a kaleidoscope. So if you go to obuk.com, you'll see like there's a holding page there at the moment. There's no music there. Okay. But that's where I'm going to be sort of putting some stuff up. Go there. I was fiddling with the website stuff the other day. So if you go there and it's not working, let me know because it's fresh up there.
Will do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm also another thing by pure accident, I've fallen into. I'm producing an EP for someone, a friend of mine, and it's nothing to do with metal at all. It's completely like unrelated. But a friend of mine, she's a great singer, and she wrote this song. Well, she came along to do some stuff on the Oblivion stuff. She came along to do some backing vocals and just do a few melodies and stuff on what I'm doing. And she heard it and she was like, I'm really digging this. Could you produce a track for me? Like I've written the song, but I've got no idea about recording technology. Could you produce something? And it's kind of like everyone who's heard it has said to me, it's kind of got the vibe of like a smoky 40s jazz club to it. There's like Hammond organ on it and acoustic drums and like upright bass and, and she's a fantastic singer and she's definitely got a voice of like Janis Joplin or, like real proper bluesy, soulful, awesome singer. And we did this one track just because she helped me out, did some vocals for me. So I was like, okay, I'll do a track for you. And she's now got a record company that want to release that track, but they want me and her to do another 5 tracks for it. And they're going to put it out as an EP. So I started work on that this week. But it's going to be a while before anything happens with that. But Ella Hayes is her name.
So she's back in the game, mate.
Yeah, I know. By accident, I know. I thought, it was all done and dusted, but apparently not. I keep saying to people, I thought I'd retired, but it turns out it was just a really long holiday. So here I am, and I'm really enjoying it again, and that's the main thing, is that I stopped enjoying it, so I stopped doing it, and I'm really getting into it now. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm, really sort of feeling like I'm expressing myself, and I'm really getting that creative outlet that has been missing for a long time. It's not been missing. I haven't felt like I've missed it, but now it's back. I'm thinking, I've really, I'm really enjoying this, So,
yeah, I meant to ask this question earlier, but what are your recollections of working with Robert McGooligan? I think his name is the fellow that.
Oh, Mags. Mags is a fucking brilliant guy. Yeah. How do you know about Mags?
Oh, I know that he produced the album, and I thought,
he's worked with loads of people, because loads of people went to Academy Studios, like
Bell Sagoth,
Anathema and Bell Sagoth and My Bride, and like loads of people went through Academy at that period. Yeah, no, Max is a brilliant bloke. He's a good engineer. He's really laid back. He's a good guitarist as well. He knows about music. He's not just an engineer. I say just an engineer, that's a cool thing to be as well, but he can, he's a musician as well. I've got nothing but excellent things to say about Mags. He's a pleasure to work with. He's so laid back. He knows what he's doing, and he's so confident in what he's doing that there's no stress, because he knows what's going to happen next. He knows that if there's a problem, it will get solved, and
Nice to be around somebody like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Totally. I'd record with Mags every day of the week, I don't know what he's up to. I haven't spoken to him since Blood Divine Day, so, it must be 20 years since I spoke to Mags.
He's on my register of people I want to chat to, actually.
Oh, is he?
And Kit Wolven, Kit, who, of course.
Right.
Who produced the version of Dusk that you were on?
That was Zach Bajon. So,
Zach Bajon. Okay.
Yeah. So formerly of Lion's Heart and Witchfinder General, although there's some controversy about how involved with Witchfinder General he was.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to comment on whose story is, the correct story or whatever, but as far as I was aware, he was, sort of proper member of Witchfinder General. He's produced one of the Bal Sagoth albums. But again, I haven't spoke to him for years, so I don't know what he's up to now. And also, who's the guy? Andy something.
Snape?
No. There was a guy came down for part of that session who was allegedly, and I've got no reason to doubt it, was an amazing mix engineer. Came down for part of that session. I don't know how much he did, how involved he was, how much credit he deserves. So I'm not saying he did loads. I'm not saying he did nothing. I don't know. But Andy, God, what was his name? He'd worked with some really mainstream people as far as I can remember. He's this is a rumor. So this is not me saying it. This is what I've heard. So I don't know if it's true or not. But I hear he was on the bender. Jason Donovan back in the day, like got into.
I'm Australian, mate. Of course, we know Jason.
Right.
Donovan. You're British, so you know him probably better than I do. But
well, I don't know how big he is in Australia. I know he's a household name over here. But back in the day, he got into drugs, and he had. I don't know if he had an overdose or what the situation was, but he had a bad turn, and apparently Andy was out with him that night, and they'd been working on Jason Donovan's record that day.
Oh, wow.
So, but I don't know. Again, it's a rumor. I don't know. Andy didn't tell me that. It was other people that told me that. So, who knows?
Good old Jason Donovan, bringing back to my early days. It's the only time I ever watched Neighbours, I think, was when he was when I was like 10 and 11 years of age.
Yeah. I used to go to a bit of Jason and Kylie.
I used to go to a boarding school, and it was a rugby and cricket playing boarding school. So we used to get a lot of fellow boarding schools from the UK come out. And we'd be about, just of the nature of things, about 3 to 6 months ahead of where you guys were in terms of watching Neighbours. So they would sit transfixed and just go, oh my God, that happened and this happened, and then join all these dots.
Yeah.
Same thing had happened with the Kiwis when they'd come over as well.
Right.
But yeah, Jason Donovan, there's a name. It's a part of our, it's just enmeshed in our childhoods and our early teenage years.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, no, I'll definitely try and talk to So, Andrew, you say, sorry, what was the fella's name? Sorry, you said?
Andy something.
Andy something.
I don't know.
Okay.
If you can speak to Zach will know. Zach Bajon will know what the guy's name is. And Zach will also know how much involvement he had. He was there for a few days. How much work he did or not, I don't know. But, that was...
and the other one was Andrea Meyer, who just passed away.
Oh, has she?
She was killed in a terrorist attack.
No way.
Yeah, in Norway.
Fuck, man.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Sorry if you're mates with them. And you just
we were mates, yeah. I mean, again, I say mates. We haven't spoken since back in the day. But yeah, no, I was going great with Andrea.
13th of October, she was killed. Yeah, some Islamic convert psychopath decided to go and perform a terrorist attack, if that's the right way of fucking describing it. Mate.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Shit. I think he was either a Belgian or a Danish national. Not throwing the nation under the bus there, but I'm just from my recollections and not having it up here. But he converted, and apparently they're describing it as a terrorist attack. So the poor lady suffered through that. So but you obviously you knew her. I'm sorry that I'm breaking the news to you now.
Yeah, no. Well, how were you to know, man? But I'm shocked. That's awful.
But I mean, your memories of working with. Is it an appropriate time to talk about that now? Or you want to leave that subject?
But I mean, working with Andrea was cool. She, in terms of the actual work, we didn't spend that much time in the studio together. I was always there for everything that was recorded with Cradle. Like when I was in the band, I was always there for every session, every day. I might have had the odd day off here and there, but basically I was there. And Dan, me and Dan were there, from the pre-production through, recording all the guide tracks through to mixing. So we weren't always involved in the technical side of things, but we were always about to stick our oar in and give our opinion on it, So Andrea wasn't in the studio that much. She was only on, in terms of the albums I was on, she was only on Principle. I don't think she was on any other stuff. But we went to some parties together and stuff as well, So, and she did a couple of gigs with us as well, So I knew her, we were mates, I know nothing bad to say about her really. She was cool. Interesting person, got a really well read and really sort of knowledgeable about all sorts of interesting things, and always an interesting conversation to be had, So
she went on to do some pretty interesting stuff. She married Samoth. She from
did she?
Apparently, going by what they're just looking here, I've got the Google page up here now, actually. And, so married Samoth. She was in Satyricon as well. I'm fairly confident.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard something about that.
But on the Kit Walden version of Dusk, I think that's her voice on there. I don't think it's Sarah's. Look, this is the problem, is that you see things written and you're not sure who's bloody put it up there and what the motivation is. So,
Well, on the version of Dusk I was on, there was two vocalists. There was Sarah and there was Danny. And I can't remember Danny's surname. I can't remember Sarah's surname, but I should do, because I know Sarah really well, and it's just fallen out of my head.
Wow. Actually, I've got to ask you.
Jezebel Diva, she goes out under, and so. But
just before I forget, I would also love to speak to your brother. I don't know. I've messaged him, and I've done it by Facebook Messenger, which is probably the worst way to do it because there's a lot of spam in there.
He's a nightmare to get hold of, man. Seriously, I can't get. Sometimes, yeah. He's really busy, and he works for I don't know, they've changed their name recently, but it's not part of it was the agency group, and then they changed to United Talent Agency, And I don't know if it's changed since that. But anyway, he's an agent and he's just constantly busy and flying all over the place. Okay. Not so much over the last couple of years, but I still haven't been able to go and see him because we've been locked down, you know. He's like, even when he's not working, I haven't been able to go over his house, you know. So, but yeah, no, he's a nightmare to get hold of. But I will talk to him. I've got to talk to him this week anyway. So I will say to him that we've had a chat and nudge him in your direction.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, when you can tell I'm just a fan. I'm just someone who's curious. I'm not interested in the clickbait bullshit. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of things and ask questions. So.
Sure, man. Yeah, no, I'm also happy to. I'm in touch with Darren Garden, who was the first drummer.
Yeah,
and who was the William Sargentson, who was the second drummer in Cradle.
If you can connect me to these people who are...
I can certainly say to him, we've had a chat and it was cool and, you know, you'd be interested in talking to them. Whether they want to or not, I don't know. But, you know, I'll certainly say to them about it.
Yeah, look, Sarah's already said thanks but no thanks in probably more direct terms than I've just described there. She wasn't rude to me at all. She did have a conversation with me over email, but she's not interested, which is a shame, which is a bloody shame because it would be fantastic to obtain her insight. But the other members you just spoke about there, Darren Gardner, your brother, I'm trying to get a hold of your successor twice removed in Les, which has been a real challenge. But he was on cruelty, so it's almost essential that I talk to him for a complete picture about things. But mate, I'll wrap things up. I just want to say, look, the fact that you've allowed me to ask the questions, I truly appreciate it.
It's all good, man. It's all good. Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Cool.
No worries.
Nice one. All right. Enjoy it. It's early in the morning for you, isn't it? So enjoy your day.
Thanks, mate. You enjoy your evening.
Cheers, man. See you later.
Thanks, mate. Catch you. Wow, well, there you have it. That was a conversation that I never thought would take place, but just did. That was Ben Ryan, who was in Cradle of Filth in the early 90s, appearing on all 3 demos, and the group's debut, the one that kicked it all off, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh. As I discussed with Ben, nobody was playing keyboards in Cradle of Filth before him. He's the foundation keyboard player and indeed a foundation member of the band. So in terms of my mission to have a chat with all of the group's 90s members, that's a significant milestone I've just achieved then. Thank you so much, Ben, for coming onto the show. Now then, for you, the audience, if you like that chat, there are many more just like it over at scarsandguitars.com. If you could like, subscribe and share, I'd appreciate it as well. And even better, if you could leave a nice comment, I'd appreciate it. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. Until next time, it's a very goodbye for now.